tell us a little bit about your journey and, jump into it. Rachel, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Fletcher. Excited to be here. I am a career recruiter. I spent 13 years in-house at the Beck Group, which is a commercial construction architecture firm in Dallas, and then at the Container Store, one of the leading retailers of storage and organization products. So when I was at the Container Store, I looked around and I thought, why are candidates applying here? They could go to Dillard's or Macy's or any number of retailers. Why Container Store? And ultimately the answer was, it was our employer brand. The company was known as a great place to work, and we worked at that. And I just started thinking, how can we do more of this? How can we be better known in the industry as a great place to work? So part of it is what you put out there, right? Like, it's applying for best places to work awards, but it's also fostering a culture inside that people are excited to share outside. And so all of those brand ambassadors end up being awesome examples of the people in the culture and drawing more people in. So I was there until the pandemic. I was furloughed, as many people were in retail and also in recruitment. And I looked around and I thought, okay, what can I do? And what do I want to do? This thing I love is helping people. I love kind of sharing the culture and sharing the brand of a company I'm passionate about. Maybe I'll start my own thing. So I started Southern Lighthouse, my company, in 2020. I had a newborn at home, a 3-year-old at home. My husband was working at home. It was total chaos every day. So over the last 3 years, I've kind of developed into becoming a content strategist for employer brand and a content writer. And so what that really means is companies who are struggling to hire but need to grow, I help with the marketing and messaging to get them out there. And a lot of that happens through telling stories. So I'm excited to talk more about sharing content and telling stories today.
Yeah, and that's what really caught my attention. I mean, so first of all, you've got two really distinct different career paths. You were in this professional service, AEC world. That's a very different world than retail, right? And two different kinds of what I call candidate personas, or like buyer personas, right? I always translate recruiting into sales and marketing speak, right? So yeah, two completely, different worlds in that sense. And then but the storytelling component. So when you think about sales and marketing, right? Anybody watch Mad Men once upon a time, or reruns, they're always talking about storytelling, because that's how we connect with each other as human beings, right? For tens of thousands of years, that's how we connected with each other as human beings, is through storytelling. Now, I am a terrible storyteller. If you get me around the campfire and we're roasting marshmallows, like, I've always butchered the story. But that's why I really wanted to talk to you, is how do we get better at it? And so, tell me, how do we, as people, maybe where storytelling doesn't come naturally, as an HR person or as a recruiter, sales and marketing is not our kind of forte. It's not what we've been trained to do. So you're teaching us how to get better at it. What are some of the fundamentals, beginning steps that I, as say an HR person, can do to get better at storytelling?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I really love the content coaching and storytelling coaching, because I think there's some core elements throughout. I think stories always start with a big, bold, attention-grabbing beginning, right? When I think about converting stories into LinkedIn posts, which is something I help a lot of clients with, it always starts with the headline. Right. So a great post, you're scrolling, you stop because you see something compelling, you see something interesting, and then you want to click in and look at the rest of the story. So when I am coaching clients on writing, on email subject lines, on your profile headline, I always like to start with spend 90 cents of that dollar on the headline, on the subject line, on the beginning, because without that, nobody's going to stop and look at your email, at your LinkedIn post, at your comment anyway. So start bold and big with something that catches people's eye, catches their ear, so that they'll keep going. So I think great stories always have a compelling beginning, And then there's an end too, and somewhere along the way, it's sharing authentic, genuine, real stories of your people, of your career path, of your growth, to get you there.
Yeah, I like that. So how do you, create those? I mean, the stories are live, they're real, but how do you extract those stories from your workforce? I guess,
Yeah.
that's got to be a challenge. I think about that often.
That's true. I always like to have a strategy meeting at the beginning and figure out, where are we trying to go? Like, what are these stories going to get us? If we're trying to sell a product, okay, the end goal is to sell a product. How do we get there? And so with personal content, this is true too, just to set the strategy for knowing who your audience is, knowing where you want to go, and knowing your value and your differentiators, what makes you unique, different, interesting, and special. So when thinking about that, I'm working with a organization that has a different theme every month. So those themes ladder up under their core values. So when we're looking at that, one of their core values is growth. So they offer growth to opportunity, for their employees. And so 1 month, it's looking at all of the growth stories. So we're asking employees, hey, tell us about your growth path here, so that we can share that externally with the organization, and with candidates as well. So I always start with the strategy, look at who you are, what you offer, where you want to go, and then find stories that align with that. If your core value is opportunity, talk about stories of opportunity. If your core value is relationships, then look at that as well. So I always start with the strategy, look at your core values. If you aren't sure kind of what those content colors or differentiators are, and find stories that align under that umbrella.
Yeah. Yeah. So that makes so much sense. I mean, start with the company mission, and then the core values, and then, and you would do that if you were trying to sell your product, but now you're also doing that in your employer branding, employers, value proposition, storytelling exercise. And so interesting. And so that's something that we began to dabble with in discovered. We built in, kind of because it was easy to do, we built in a one-way video interview. I'm not the biggest fan, like from a recruiter perspective and talent acquisition guy, of one-way video. There are some really great applications for it in certain instances, because I'm definitely a believer, and I believe we probably resonate there, but engaging the talent pool, like you want it to be as personal and as engaging as possible. But when you are dealing with volume hiring, it can be difficult. But we actually, because I'm not a big fan of using it for interviewing, we actually started using it to collect these stories. So, but I just learned something great. Let's take that core value, let's create a couple of questions to prompt the people around that. Now, you don't need to use a one-way video interview. You can pull out your iPhone, right? What about production value? So that's always, clients always say to me like, well, we're not ready. And I mean, this is like a 5-minute video, and it could take them like 2 weeks to create it. I'm like, just answer the 3 questions, everything's easy. All you gotta do is hit play. Like, how do you feel about that?
I think it's scary. I think it's really scary to share your story. It's scary to be on video too. And speaking as a content creator whose job it is to promote my business and my services, it is scary. I always recommend starting small. So, if video feels intimidating, maybe just start commenting on LinkedIn, leaving meaningful comments that are more than 4 words. Build up to creating your first post, and maybe that's an inspirational quote, maybe that's 2 sentences about something you learned, and then work your way up to video. As an example, I just did a personal branding masterclass, and I promoted it for 2 weeks. I did 11 different types of content. The best performing content by far, by 2 times, was video. So there's tremendous opportunity in creating video, because it's engaging, because people hear your voice and they see your face. It's so many different senses all at once. So video is an incredibly powerful tool for sharing your story on LinkedIn. But I totally understand it can be intimidating.
Yeah.
If that's where you're at, I think it's okay to slowly ladder up to that.
Yeah. Build up to it. Yeah. That's great. So let's see. What else I have on your story? So who should tell these stories, right?
Yeah, I think with employer brand recruitment marketing, if your goal is to bring people into the organization, shining a light on those people is really important. I think our job as recruiters and employer brand professionals is to shine that light on your people and tell those stories. I also find I'm really, really passionate about leaders, founders, executives telling their story, their personal story, but also the company story. The founder, why did they start the organization? What's their mission? What are they passionate about? I think about Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, is a really great example of someone who is super passionate about their product, wears it, sees it in the airport, talks to people about it all the time. Like, what a great brand ambassador. If your leader isn't leading in front, why should your employees follow?
Yeah.
So I think founders
why?
Yeah, why? So I think founders always need to be kind of leading in front and talking about the culture, the mission, what's great about the organization. It makes it a lot easier for all of the employees to follow. So definitely recommend founders find a ghostwriter or write themselves when it comes to telling their story and their company story.
Well, and I think that's an interesting thing I see a lot. And I mean, I deal with a lot of kind of SMB. So, 0 to 500 employees. And a lot of times, and I think I've even been guilty of this in my own organization, is sometimes we don't talk about the core values and the why enough. It's like, it's very clear probably to the leaders why we're doing this and what problems that we're trying to solve with our products or services. But that gets lost in the day-to-day minutia of like just doing our work, right? And so actually there might be maybe a double or kind of a double win here in this exercise. If you're going to create recruitment marketing content and start telling stories, it's a good opportunity to remind everybody about our why, our mission, and our core values, because it's the reason to have a conversation about those things, right?
Totally. And I love what you said, Fletcher, of your why. I think it's so important to start with your why. I was working with a nonprofit recently, and their job description looked like every other job description. We need 8 years of experience and we'll be in the office. And I said, hold on, we're missing the why. Why do people work here? Why do you exist? You exist so that you can help women experiencing breast cancer. That's an enormous mission and so impactful. Let's put that at the top. So we rewrote the job description so that they start with, we believe in eradicating breast cancer. This is what we're working for. And here's all the things you get. Here's all the benefits. Then we went into you need 8 years of experience and a college degree kind of thing. So I think always starting with your why on your career site, on your job descriptions, even as you as a person, in your about section, what's your why? My why, I named my company Southern Lighthouse because I love the idea of a lighthouse guiding ships through the harbor, through dangerous rocky coastlines, and having the ability to make that journey smoother. And so when naming my company, that image really resonated. And I thought, if I can be someone who helps guide my clients to where they need to go easily, safely, that's my mission. That's my why. So I'm reminded of that every time I see a lighthouse.
Yeah, life is hard enough as it is. So if you can have a lighthouse to guide you, or somebody to guide you through that journey, amen to that. Because I mean, that's just like we all need it, right? Especially at certain points in our lives, we need somebody there to help us navigate the rough waters and the treacherous paths that we all face at some point in our lives, right? So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And the more I thought about it, I realized really kind of what I'm doing is coaching employer brand recruiters, marketers on how to shine that light on their own people. This idea of these lighthouses shining out, like they're not plugged into anything. It's really innate. It comes from within. And so the more employees can share those stories, the easier recruitment gets, right? So, I've worked with headhunters, with external firms, for staffing firms, and it can be really expensive. But if you are able to create a culture where people are sharing their stories, sharing the amazing things about what it's like to work there, sharing the mission, recruitment gets so much easier and really brings down the cost on using exterior, recruiters. Like if we're able to shine from within, it reduces cost, it makes recruitment more attractive, and it spreads your culture.
Yeah, and ultimately more enjoyable process, because people who are showing up, they're already indoctrinated a little bit into the why and the values, because they're connected probably to somebody within the organization who's sort of, maybe you and I went to a barbecue and I started talking to you about why I love working here, right? And then, maybe the timing wasn't right, but 6 months later you show up and you're a bit indoctrinated into the culture, the idea of why this is a great organization to work for. You sort of already drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, and now you're an eager participant in that process, as opposed to a reluctant, participant, which is often what we're dealing with when you're dealing with headhunters, right? I mean, a headhunter, we're cold calling somebody to say, hey, Rachel, are you interested in a new opportunity? And you're like, well, I don't know. Why should I be? Right?
Yes.
Like, is it really so much better than what do you have to offer that's so amazing that I should even give you the time of day? Right.
Right. Yeah. I think people trust people. And ultimately, I read a stat, it was like 92% of people look at their friends and family first before looking for a job. So you're right. That family barbecue, the kids' soccer game, just in conversation, bringing up like, hey, how's work? Oh, it's actually awesome. I went to go play golf with my boss or whatever. Feels a lot better, that natural organic story, rather than like, I don't know, it's fine, man. Like, whatever. Like, I think we can really be advocates for our own company because people trust people at the end of the day.
That brings up a really interesting thing. I didn't think about this prior, but my brother-in-law, he works for a company called Lakeshore. So I'm just plug. I don't think there's any, I'm not stepping on any boundaries here. Lakeshore does learning materials for like schools from preschool through elementary school, all the way. Now they're getting into high school. He is, first of all, he's like one of the top sales reps in the company. But that's because he drinks the Kool-Aid. I mean, I play golf with him. We go to family barbecues. We do dinners. He is so stoked on where he works, man. He like talks about all the new products. I'm like, I don't know anything about like kids or like schools or anything, but he is so passionate about it. He just feels compelled to like tell me like, oh, they're creating these new products and it's so great. And, we create these really amazing solutions. And I, totally, he told me about this library that they built and they totally modernized it and how happy the kids were and the students. And I was like, well, that's a really cool story. I mean, it's totally not in my world, but I'm like, okay, I bought into this Lakeshore company as an organization, but definitely if I knew somebody who was in that space or might be interested, I would be thinking of him. I'd be like, you know what, you should talk to Nick at Lakeshore. He might offer an opportunity for you, right?
Totally. And what's cool about that example with your brother is it wasn't an ad that convinced you, right? It wasn't even a job description. It wasn't their website. It was a real human being telling a real story because he really believes it. And that's where I think those authentic stories can be so powerful, is that we're sharing the real deal, what it's really like. And that true passion ignites, like you can't light a fire if you're not on fire yourself. And so whatever you're passionate about, and this is true of all personal branding, if you are super passionate about chocolate chip cookies, like I am, like, you make advocates of everyone because they're like, oh yeah, I know she loves that. So I must believe it. But
well, maybe I'll try that chocolate chip cookie next time it's presented.
You should. But his passion for Lakeshore, which is a great company, like my experience is more for buying toys for my kids. He was so on fire. He inspired you, and kind of ignited you about their mission. So I love that example.
But I learned something new, right? It was, not something that would ever have been part of my world, but I mean, every time I see the guy, he always has a new story, right? And I'm so stoked for him. I mean, he's doing really well. He's super happy, and that's what work's all about. So I think that kind of brings me to a topic that is super important to me. I mean, look, we all have to work in some capacity or another, whether we're doing gig work or entrepreneurs or we're, working for an organization, but we spend so much of our time at work, and, ultimately quality of life is what matters, right? As human beings, it's, animal nature to seek better quality of life, period, right? Like if you're bare in the woods, you look for the most amount of food you can eat, right? The most comfort that you can find. I mean, as human beings, we all want the same thing, right? We want to be able to take care of our families, take care of ourselves, and improve the quality of life. And I think actually Nick's story really helps highlight that. His success has done that for him, both personally and professionally. And that's something that I think we miss in these stories that we tell, is tie those back to the impact it's made on not just me professionally, but personally, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like your employer brand is made up of hundreds of personal brands. So every organization is a 100-person organization, has all of those voices and all of those stories. And I love that intersection of where your company values and your personal values meet. In my head, I think of this Venn diagram, and you have like your company values, and maybe that's like innovation and collaboration and creativity.
Yeah.
And then your personal values, and maybe that's like autonomy, independence, and creativity. Where those overlap is really great content. And the place that overlapped in that example was creativity. So if you have a story of how your employer empowered you to go be creative or to come up with a creative solution, or you're talking about how you learn to cross stitch at home, and that's offering your creativity, like that is really great content that works for both worlds, right? So I love kind of the intersection of that personal brand and that professional brand, and talking about content that works for both of those circles and upholds your personal and your company brand as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So a couple of really good takeaways here. Let's make sure that we're creating content and telling stories that help explain or help tell a story around the why, and the impact that it makes, the core values, stories around each one of those. I love that. You can have pillar content, every quarter, every month, whatever the frequency is, but that gives you a really great jumping off point. And you're killing two birds with one stone. Not only are you telling your story about why somebody should want to come work here, but you're helping reinforce your core values within your organization, which is a difficult task in itself, right? When as an HR leader, and you say, well, geez, how are we going to get everybody excited about our core values? Like, oh, boom, let's create recruitment marketing content, right? Now we're doing both at the same time. Not that it stops there, but and then aligning and getting people to share their own personal why, and how the organization can help them advance their own quality of life, and drawing those connections. So I think those are some really great takeaways that people can begin to use, and some great ideas that they can use to. And I think it's fairly easy. So I always like to wrap these up with kind of like 3 things that you could do today or tomorrow, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you could chunk what we just talked about down into like 3 very simple action steps people could do, what do you think those would be?
Yeah, and that was a super good summary. So
But I felt it was a little convoluted, so maybe we could condense it down.
no, I think empower your people to tell their stories. And I think giving your employees guidelines of like, hey, I mean, this is what we do. I work with my clients, with this theme a month. It's like, okay, the theme this month is opportunity. That was one of our core pillars. Tell me about a time that the company gave you opportunity for growth here.
Super simple. That's
Yeah,
it.
just one question, and just let them talk or type, whatever is more comfortable for them. That's where those stories can come out, by giving them guidance, giving them a prompt, because like you said, it's super scary to say like, hey, go share your story, or
Like, where do I begin, right?
Where do I start? Well, let's start with one question, and one strategic question that aligns with our company values.
Yeah.
So
Imagine if you got 20 people who did that. You could put that into a montage video, right? And just share, hey, 20 reasons, opportunity stories all at once. And I mean, each person takes 2 minutes to share their little, story, right?
Yeah. And, for social media, bite-sized content works best. It's super, super short. And so I'm a fan of recycling in real life and in professional life, but you have 20 people sharing a 1-minute story. Cool. You've got content for 3 months, and then you can do a compilation video, and then you can make it into a blog, and then you can add a quote at the bottom of your email signature. So use that content that you have from your precious employees and their precious time over and over and over again in different formats. So that's another way to stretch your content budget. Make your content go further is just use it in all kinds of forms and all kinds of formats and save it and then reshare it later.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What would be another action item that, most people can implement tomorrow if they wanted to?
Lead with your mission, lead with your why. And in our example, we talked about your job description, lead with, here's what we do. And we empower the world, or we recycle bottles, or we make breast cancer more manageable in the process, whatever it is. Lead with your mission as an organization. And I think we can do that with our personal brands too. Like, what are we all about? Put it in your about section for your LinkedIn profile. And that really ties in with kind of your target audience, all of that strategy. Knowing your why is really, really massive.
So we put that on our career page, we put that on our ads, we put it in our company LinkedIn page, we put it on, everywhere that's front and center, and that's super easy. And it might take you 20 minutes tomorrow to just update and refresh your content by adding your mission, your why, your core values. Super, super simple thing to do. If you have 20 job posts out there today, just go back in and do a quick edit on them and just push the rest of the content to the bottom and put that stuff up at the top, and you'll probably be winning, seeing more applicants the next day, right?
Yep, definitely. I think once you know who you are, you can share it with the world. And that's true of job seekers too. I mean, as a recruiter, my first question is, how are you? And my second question is, tell me about you. And that seems like a really hard question to answer sometimes.
Yeah.
What am I, and how do I distill my essence into, a story? But it's something you can practice, and it's something salespeople practice. Your brother-in-law with Lakeshore, I'm sure, has that down pat because he said it over and over and over again. So if you're looking for a job, if you're not looking for a job, kind of know your story, distill it down to the essence of a meaningful story, making a connection with the person you're talking to. And it's something you can practice. So know your story, know your why, and lead with that. And then you would ask for a third. My philosophy in life in general is the more you give, the more you get. The more you put in, the more you get out. And I think that's true when we're creating content. Also, the more actively I show up, the more leads I get, the more connections I get, the more friendships I develop. And the goal for me on being LinkedIn is to get off LinkedIn, to build relationships with real people off the platform. So for me, it's just an opportunity to connect and to meet. But the more I show up, the more I'm going to get out of it.
And I totally agree. And that's, why I love this. And this is a bit of an experiment for us. We had some technical difficulties in the beginning, but it's really great to be able to connect and, have a conversation with somebody who's so smart and so brings so many great ideas to the table. Because I'm always going to remember you, Rachel, right? And we're going to share your message with our audience and yours, and you're going to be able to share that with theirs, and forever will be memorialized, right? In all of this. And definitely really appreciate what you are doing for employers and for the people that work for them, because again, reminding them of these stories helps reinvigorate them and their day-to-day activities, as well as, get the word out and just make hiring a million times easier. Right.
I'm passionate about creating beautiful candidate experiences. We've all been that person looking for a job, interviewing for a job. It's not the best. And the bar is super low for employers, but we can raise it and we can make beautiful candidate experiences, because it is necessary to treat humans like humans. And you can do that in your copy on your career site. And I also believe that everyone has a story to share. Everyone has value to add. So you go shine your light.
Yeah. Awesome.